Thank you very much, Mr. Stewart, and we're looking forward to everything that UGA has to offer over the next few years. Our next speaker is David Mustine, who I've had the pleasure of meeting with a few times, and he's been on our radio show before, and we also had a little bit of that banter about competition between Ohio and Pennsylvania. David Mustine is General Manager for Energy of JobsOhio, with a professional life grounded in strategic and business planning, public policy, business development, and performance management. Mr. Mustine has spent most of his career in the energy industry, and he has had this experience in over 25 countries. So I'm going to challenge everyone for a second, and we're going to do a little cheer because this is going to be a great presentation from Mr. Mustine. So when I say jobs, you say Ohio. Jobs. Jobs. Excellent. With that, let's give a round of applause for David Mustine.
I think that's a first. I don't think I've ever got up to speak when there was a cheer to kind of lead it in. But good afternoon. It's fantastic to be here in Youngstown as an Ohioan. What could be more exciting than to see the interest level and the business activity that's happening right here in Youngstown related to oil and gas exploration and production. I got active in the oil and gas industry, believe it or not, right after I graduated from The Ohio State University, and spent the first 7 years of my career in oil and gas before joining American Electric Power. And then later in my career was active again in the oil and gas industry. I never, in my wildest imagination, thought I'd have an opportunity to serve the state in JobsOhio and be a part of making this state great through creating jobs in the energy sector with a great emphasis here in the Utica shale. So it's a great pleasure to be here. I'm here to serve as well, so I'm looking forward to meeting many of you as we figure out together how to maximize the value of the Utica. Now, before we talk about Utica shale, I want to give you a little bit of update on who is JobsOhio, or what is JobsOhio. This was an initiative by Governor Kasich. It was passed by the legislature in this first year of the General Assembly, and it really kind of got started in July of just this past summer. It is a nonprofit entity. It's a private corporation, and it has its own board of directors. The purpose of JobsOhio is to lead in job creation, business retention, expansion, and also attraction in our state. We're the lead group to do that for the state of Ohio. Mark Kwame, who is the leader of this group, he likes to say it's taking Ohio to the marketplace, and that's what we do. In JobsOhio, we're going to focus on a number of sectors that we think have the greatest potential to create jobs here in our state. And I'm focused on the oil and gas and energy sector is my area of emphasis. Of course, in this activity, we partner very closely with the Department of Development. Chris Schmink is our director there. She has a fantastic business background. And we work very closely with them because there's still a number of programs that they're responsible for, and it's a great partnership with them. And I'll tell you about our regional partnerships in just a second. Here's what we're about in JobsOhio. Our focus is grow what we have. When I talk to businesses that are already here, we first of all say, you're the most important business. You're here. What can we do to keep you here? What can we here to help you grow? Second thing is that we go on the offense. We're being very proactive. We're not waiting for people to come to us. I was in Houston yesterday with the governor and also with Mark Kwame. We met with probably 40 companies. They said it's the first time that they can think of that a governor from another state came down to engage with the industry about opportunities in their state. And I think the governor made a very big and positive impression. But that's an example of us going on the offense. You know, we want to get companies to come to Ohio, invest in Ohio, and hire Ohioans. The idea of having JobsOhio, by being a private company, private entity, we can hire business people, we can move fast, we can have kind of peer-to-peer. We are able to attract business people into JobsOhio that allows us to sit down and talk to business people on terms that they're used to having those discussions. And the people that we're bringing together have significant experience either in economic development or directly in the business sectors that we're focused on. How are we going to measure success? We're going to be very focused on metrics, and there's really three. New job creation, and related to that is increased payroll. Also, new capital invested in the state, and finally, return on investment. If there's going to be an incentive offered, we want to make sure that there's a positive return on investment to the state. That means that the taxes collected over time will exceed, the incentive that's created. So those are the metrics that we're using, and we'll be very focused on those. Here's our board of directors, and as you can see, we got a good cross-section from around the state. We have, when you have a CEO of Procter & Gamble and the chairman of the president of the Ohio State University, we got Gary Hemiger from Marathon Petroleum, and then we also have Pam Springer, who has started her own business. It's a fantastic business in the Columbus area. And then Larry Kidd, who's kind of from the Appalachia area, very involved in workforce development. So we have a nice cross-section, and that's who we're accountable to. The governor appoints this board, and then we're responsible to them in our performance. I mentioned that we have some key sectors that we're focused on. And here they are, 9 of them. I'm focusing on the polymers and on the chemical and energy piece, and we have 2 other general managers on staff now. They're focused on banking and insurance, food processing, IT, and then also manufacturing, which kind of cuts across a lot of these sectors. We anticipate bringing a few more general managers on, as well as supported by project managers. Of course, we have a lot of strengths in these areas on the right there. When you look at our back office capabilities, advanced manufacturing, logistics as well. So we're not going to lose sight of those as we look at these various sectors. This is a really critical slide. I haven't seen Tom Humphreys here yet. I know he's here. Hey, Tom, how are you? The whole structure of JobsOhio is a partnership with the regional economic development efforts, of which Youngstown and this Mahoney-Trumbull County area participate in, and as well as we have other regional organizations around the state. So Team NEO is the regional organization for this part of the state. I love this concept. Instead of JobsOhio staffing around the state, we have a core team that then works with the expertise in the regions and then here locally. And that's why we're going to do it. It's a partnership. We've met on a number of occasions. We're planning together. We're sharing resources together. A good example of that is Salesforce. We're getting all the regions to use Salesforce as well as JobsOhio so that we have one database for the various projects that we're all working on. So this is a real key. A critical success factor is this right here, our regional approach. So how we're really working is we have our partners in the center there, our regional partners, the general managers focusing on sectors, bringing sector expertise to that, and then working with our project managers to win deals for Ohio. So that's how we see this working, and I think we're off to a good start. Tom, I hope you think so too, and the best is yet to come. And obviously, our goal is to win deals for the state. To date, there's been 40,000 net new jobs created. I think somewhere over 150 deals that we've been involved in, and we're just beginning. Okay, so that's a little bit about JobsOhio and the role we have in the economic development for the state of Ohio. Now I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the energy sector with a focus on Utica and Marcellus shale. Marcellus shale still has a role in Ohio, although it seems from the data that I'm looking at, it's pretty narrow. There's a kind of a thin area of Marcellus in the far eastern part of the state. The good news is it's wet gas, which improves the economics. But the real driver on exploration and development in our state, I believe, is going to be the Utica shale. And that's the darker cover, as well as it kind of is underneath the Marcellus as well in those far eastern counties. So that's what it's all about. I know you've seen maps here today. This is my favorite slide because this really kind of gives you an idea of how JobsOhio and our regional partners, how we're looking at this. We're looking at the whole value chain associated with this industry. And we start upstream. That's the exploration, that's the production, that's the supply and services that support the drilling of the wells and bringing them into production. And let's don't overlook all the environmental services, the legal services, there's many other professional services involved to make this industry happen, and that's an important piece. So we look at the upstream. But at the same time, we're also looking at the midstream. Yesterday, we met with maybe 10 different companies that are looking at pipeline, processing, fractionation investments. Each of these projects are in the hundreds of millions of dollars, perhaps $1 billion type projects. We don't know how many we'll get in Ohio. I believe we will get them in Ohio. They need to be located near the production. We've certainly seen that happen in the Marcellus, in Pennsylvania, and then also in West Virginia. But we're very focused, and I'm hopeful that we'll see our first commitment out of the midstream even before year end of a major processing and gathering commitment here in the eastern part of the state. So related to that, of course, is construction. So general contractors, operators, engineers, they've been a strong supporter of this effort. It also brings in a lot of those players, too, when you get into the construction of these facilities and pipelines to it. So that's the midstream. And then also we have the downstream, the companies that actually use these products that are produced, either the methane gas, the liquids, the oil. We have some great assets here in the state with refineries. You know, Marathon Refinery not too far from here, the possibility of using Ohio crude. I don't know if Tom said this in his remarks, but right now all Ohio crude is being refined outside of the state of Ohio. We'd like to see that changed. Other businesses that use natural gas, like Potash Corporation over in Lima, Ohio, they use natural gas as a feedstock to create nitrogen used in fertilizers. So they're a user of this product. The good news is, thanks to Marcellus and the lower natural gas prices, which, by the way, we all are benefiting from in giving us more money in our pockets, they have gone from being a marginal producer in their system to being really a very economic producer, and they're now looking for expansion. And boy, I don't want to forget, when we talk about upstream and supply and services, you know, what could be better than the V&M Stars story? And I got here late for the announcement, but, you know, another 57 million, another 100 jobs. What an outstanding thing for Ohio, an outstanding accomplishment for Youngstown. And this is critical materials that are needed to have this industry grow. So we're very grateful and thankful for what V&M's doing here in Youngstown and in our state. So downstream we're also working at. You know, maybe we'll have power plants that'll burn natural gas. You know, that's another possibility. So we're working upstream, midstream, and downstream all at the same time. Our goal is to capture as much of this value in Ohio. Ohio investment, Ohio is getting the jobs. So now you can see why it's my favorite slide. I think you've known most of these, so I won't spend a lot of time, but the economic impact we are already experiencing. And that's in large part because of what's happened in the Marcellus. And even beyond that, by the way, I was in Dover, New Philadelphia area just before Thanksgiving holiday, and Trimcar, it makes steel tanks, or it's actually aluminum tanks that go on beds for diesel trucks to haul oil. All those tanks are being sent to the Bakken shale play out in North Dakota. So we're benefiting in Ohio for even what's happening in shale in North Dakota. So Marcellus to the east of us, even the Bakken out of North Dakota, is generating sales for Ohio companies like Trimcar, like U.S. Steel, V&M Star, Miller Supply in Worcester, an excellent company that does a lot of supplies. Down in Marietta, Timken, of course, Ariel, our major compressor company in Mount Vernon, and I already mentioned Potash. So what is so exciting about this industry is the breadth of it. And being a manufacturing state, and we're still a top 3 or 4 manufacturing state in the United States, we are benefiting beyond just what's happening in our local fields where we're doing exploration and production. So it's quite significant. You've seen lots of quotes. I'll just tell you, in my 30 years in being in the energy business, this is the most significant development that I've witnessed, and it's great to have it happening and to be a part of it right here in Ohio. Tom Stewart did a great job of covering this slide. I started off this year being in the Department of Natural Resources, which is the regulator of this industry. And I want to tell you, I'm very impressed with the people and the program and the oil and gas law that we have in place. My hat's off to, and it really was a bipartisan effort, as Tom said, when you looked at the last General Assembly that passed the Senate Bill 165 to strengthen our law in oil and gas regulation. Recently, the rules on well construction are out for public comment. That will, again, strengthen our oversight here in the state. So I am very proud of what has been accomplished here, and I think we have excellent people that are overseeing this industry. And you know what? The industry, I've met with many of these companies. They want consistent. They have no problem with stringent as long as it's consistent and fair. They know what it is. They don't want the things changing on them constantly, so they can make good business decisions. So it's we got a real strong basis here in the regulatory framework. I think you've heard a lot about hydraulic fracturing today, and it's been much reported, so I won't spend time on it. I just want to mention that if you look at the well construction piece, that cutout there at the top, that's really the key piece. What happens in that first 1,000 feet? And the number of casing, the cementing, and again, that's something that our regulatory framework is designed to have a lot of oversight on, and we're strengthening it with these new rules that are coming out. So we're confident, again, that we can do this safely here in Ohio. Workforce development. This is perhaps the biggest issue, maybe the biggest challenge, maybe the biggest opportunity we face in Ohio. Governor Kasich saw this as so important that he appointed Rich Frederick, and Rich unfortunately has the flu, otherwise I think he would have been up here today. But Rich is in the governor's office, as the governor likes to say, so I can get my hands on him, to make sure that the various state agencies, I think Rich quotes that we have 77 programs across 13 state agencies related to workforce development. Doesn't sound real efficient to me. Rich is trying to get on top of how do we streamline this, get it focused so that we're meeting the needs of businesses to make sure our many assets that we have in the state, from the community colleges, technical schools, our vocational schools, One Stop, Youngstown State, Eastern Gateway, you look across our state, we have tremendous assets in the area of education. How do we get it in alignment with what the businesses need? And you know what? We're hearing pretty regularly, very consistently, what they're looking for. They're looking for CDL licensed people. There's a lot of equipment that needs to be driven around our state. They're looking for diesel mechanics. They're looking for welders. We have to identify, train, and provide these types of trained workers. And it's not just for drilling oil and gas wells. We're hearing this in many of our manufacturing plants around the state too. So the good news is we see a demand. The challenge is how do we get people prepared to take these jobs and be well trained for them. So that's what Rich is focused on. The governor is extremely focused on it. He brought it up in every meeting we were in yesterday. We got a commitment yesterday from the industry to have a follow-on summit on workforce where they'll come and explain exactly what they need and when they'll need it so we can make sure we have all of our assets in alignment to get trained workers, Ohio trained workers, into these jobs. We've learned a lot from Pennsylvania, and the ShaleNet has been a great resource. I think Eastern Gateway has kind of taken the lead with interfacing with ShaleNet and how we can exploit that website and some of the training programs they've put together for Ohio. So we've benefited from learning from the other states. So this is a real big one. You're going to hear a lot more about it, and we're going to need everybody's help because for us to succeed here, we can't do it the way we've always done it. We have to come up with new, creative, innovative ways to get workers trained to fill these positions. I thought I would just give you a little highlight of the activity, and this is actually a big topic. At the beginning of the year, when I went into Department of Natural Resources, I think we just had maybe a very few, if any, Utica well permits, maybe just a handful at that time. So you can see that in the course of this year, 68 permits have been issued. It's been going at 6 or 7 a week, for a number of weeks now. 15 Utica wells have been drilled. we're still very early in the definition of the Utica play. And what do I mean by that? The definition is trying to determine where is the wet gas, because that has higher economic value because of the liquids have a higher value than the dry gas, the methane gas. So define where's the wet gas, how far east does it go, how far west does it go, and then where's the oil zone? And is the oil zone, does it have enough pressure, can it be productive, which we hope it will. So a number of wells are going to need to be drilled to further define this play so we know how extensive it is and how prolific it's going to be. I've heard different numbers. I've heard on the low side 40. I've heard on the high side 100. So we think over the next 12 months we'll see the number of wells drilled go up significantly, and we'll have a lot better information. Certainly the early wells are very positive. We've heard some say some of the early Utica wells are the best shale wells yet drilled in the country. So we'll see. Positive news, but we got a lot more wells to drill. I will tell you that was a common thing I heard yesterday in Houston was don't get ahead of this, let's be cautious. We got a lot of wells to drill before we really know how extensive it is. But, very positive. There's about 11 wells in progress, either that have been drilled or in the completing process as we speak. I think there's about a half a dozen triple stack rigs in the state now, and we'll be watching that very carefully because that's an indication of how quickly things are developing here. I can tell you for a fact that all the major oil companies will be in the Utica, Chevron, ExxonMobil, Shell, all these companies will be there. We already have Chesapeake, Anadarko. These are very large companies. Devon is another one. So we have the largest companies in the United States are here taking acreage position and preparing their drilling plans. We see that as a very positive sign. So let me just kind of summarize. When you look at what this could mean to Ohio, and if you think about what are some of the key things that create a strong economy, and it really gets down to these three things. These are the three critical things that give you a strong economy. One is you got to have capital. You got to have money to invest. The oil and gas industry, Utica Shale, is attracting a lot of capital investment. Probably the best example we can point to right now is the over $1 billion, I don't know how much, maybe $2 billion, that's already been invested in acquiring leases in our state. Much of that money has gone into Ohioans' pockets that own the land, that own the mineral rights. That's new capital for them to pay down debt, to buy new equipment, to invest, to send their kids to college. So that's one example of capital investment. The second thing that gives you a strong economic growth is a skilled workforce. Having a demand for these jobs gives us that pull that we need to get workers trained, motivated, and engaged in the workforce. We got to break through that 9% number of unemployment that we've been stuck at for a long time. And again, Utica provides a significant breakthrough in that area, and we expect to see that over the ensuing months. And the third one is access to low-cost, reliable energy. Now, I can remember in my early days in my career, there was concern, do we have enough natural gas in this country? Some of the big pipelines said, we don't have enough gas committed to our systems to supply, Boston and New York and Cleveland in the winter. They were concerned about that 25, 30 years ago. Well, I've looked at a lot of reports, and I feel very confident that we now have decades of natural gas supply based on current usage rates here in the United States. So we have a reliable supply in our own backyard of energy at a relatively low cost. That kind of combination, energy, low cost, reliable supply, add in skilled workforce, add in new capital so we can invest in Ohio businesses, many that are out here today. It's the combination of those three things that can allow us to get a breakthrough in our economy, to get positive economic growth in our state, bring unemployment down and shatter through that 9% ceiling that we've had, or floor that we've had to break through. So that's really what I wanted to share with you today. I thank you very much, and thank you for having me here today.
Hey folks, stick around. We just asked David Mustine if he'd take a couple questions, and I'm sure somebody has a couple comments. Yes, sir, right over here. There's a microphone right here. Come on up. You're awesome. Thanks, really.
Thank you. My name is John Colm with WireNet in Cleveland. Great to hear your talk. My question is about the challenges and opportunities the state sees in developing the manufacturing supply chain part of this industry. And you touched on it a little bit when you presented the notion of the total value chain, so not just limiting this opportunity to exploration and extraction, but also to the users of natural gas. Wonder if you could comment on that a little bit, something we're very interested in. We've worked on this with the wind industry in Ohio for the state, and look forward to chances to partner with you on this.
Good. Thank you for that question. Hopefully everybody heard it. It was a very good question about what are we doing on the supply chain. In fact, I met with Tom and others recently with the Team NEO, and we agreed that this is a primary focus right now. And we're setting up a time to develop an action plan around making sure we know what assets we have in the state already, companies that are already in the supply chain or have the capability to be suppliers into this industry. We need to make sure we know who they are. Then we need to be proactively reaching them to determine what do they need to help expand their business, those that are already here. So that is a focus and will be a focus with the regional partners in JobsOhio. Ohio has a lot of assets, as you well know, fabrication that we have. Of course, we've talked about the production of steel, but whether it's valves and other things, pumps, we have a lot of that already. Some of it might need to get retooled towards this industry from others, but we think we have a strong base there. We want to build on that base. And you know what? We're doing an economic analysis that there's a kind of a partnership that's being formed, a broad-based partnership of businesses. And one of the things we want to do in that analysis is do a gap analysis. Based on what the industry needs and supplies, based on what we have, where's the gaps? How do we fill those gaps? And that'll help us, whether we can fill it with existing companies or we go recruit companies to come here and fill that gap. But I think you're absolutely right. And by the way, we're not overlooking the wind and solar supply chain that we have, and that is going to continue to be looked at and making sure that we haven't forgotten it as we get excited about Utica. So there's been a lot of work there, and we want to make sure that that is continued to grow as well. So thank you for your question.
You want to do one more?
Yeah, let's do another.
Yeah, one more.
Yes, do you have any idea when the infrastructure will be in place, when these wells are actually capable or ready to be turned on, when the pipelines, just any idea at all when they can actually go to the plants and everything, so we can get the wells turned on?
Yeah, great question. He asked, do we have any idea of timing of when these wells will actually start producing? I think today there's about 4 wells that are producing. And it's a great question. Let me tell you what one of the issues is. And it's called ethane. In the wet gas, there's a significant amount of ethane that's in this source rock. So that ethane, there's only a certain amount of it that can be blended into a pipeline to meet their specs. So right now they're doing some blending and they're able to produce it into an existing pipeline. There'll be a limit on how much that can be done. That means we have to have processing plants in fractionation plants in Ohio. If a plant was announced today, it would probably take 18 months before it was operational. So that's you got a delay there before some of those wells could get online. Second, we have a lot of pipelines in our state, so we have a lot of infrastructure. Again, something you don't have in North Dakota. We have that. Many of the pipelines are trying to figure out what changes can they make to help producers take their gas sooner so that we can develop out this, define the play. So lots of work. I think we'll see some wells come online over the next 12 to 18 months, but I think the real larger volume is likely to be past 18 months. you know, the 18 to 36 months, because it's going to be dependent on those processors and fractionations being built, and none are under construction in Ohio as of today. Is that helpful? And it might be. His point was it may be longer than that, and it might be. I'm just giving you what, you know, that would be kind of a best case, because to get those facilities built. So some of it will get blended in, but the larger volumes is going to, you're right, it's going to take more infrastructure to be built. Fortunately, we have some infrastructure in place, a lot of infrastructure. Some of that will be converted, you know, so that you can take wet gas in a line instead of methane gas. So some of that's going on. A lot of work going on in the midstream right now. It's a very important piece. We're very focused on it. So,
Excellent.
well, great. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you. Let's